Hello friends, Pig recently released a video called StarCraft's latest patch has failed, in which he details in 30 minutes why he believes that the latest StarCraft patch has failed. He actually is pretty true to the title. He discusses the current patching method, some of the changes that happened, some of the changes that he would have liked to have happen, and a little bit about the future of StarCraft 2 as well. I thought it was an interesting video with some cool thoughts. I decided, well, I think I have some good input on this as well. Let's see if I can throw a little video together as well. So I divided this video up in three parts. The first part is the goal setting. Then the second part will be talking about the goals that were achieved with the patch and goals that weren't achieved with the patch. And finally, I'll talk a bit about the method and the future. So yeah, let's just hop into the first part, which is going to be the goal setting. For this patch, we kind of wanted to get some of the major issues that were currently at play in the game addressed without really touching anything too big that could impact too many different things. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One, we did not quite understand how this was exactly going to work. I mean, it was a first time. Kind of see it as like we are trying to, cook a meal. And rather than immediately starting with the main course, because, we're in a new kitchen, we're going to start with an appetizer, first small dish. And if we messed it up, it will be easier to apologize as long as we fix it in the main course. But if we, immediately mess up the main course, the entire meal is going to be ruined. In this analogy, indeed, the meal is going to be StarCraft 2. So we want to kind of start small. And another reason is because we had some very easily identified issues that we wanted to fix. Whenever you're working with a lot of people, like we are in the community council that mainly consists of pro gamers, one of the most important things is setting the correct goals. And with the issues that we found, I think that was rather easy. It's not like there were 5 people going, oh, I think people going straight into Airtos is fantastic, or I think Groundtos is way too strong. I'm not sure why we're trying to buff that. No, everyone kind of agreed that the Queen Walk killed a lot of the Stargate into Groundtos type of play that we used to see before the Void Ray buff. And a lot of people also agreed with the fact that going straight into Airtos from a Void Ray Disruptor opener just didn't really provide very fun gameplay. Very boring kind of games that we all played out in our heads already. Like nothing really intense happened, almost no innovation whatsoever in this matchup. The only real innovation was whether we could hit a carrier timing 20 seconds earlier, or maybe with a faster +2 upgrade, or with one extra Archon here or there. You could practically already completely play out the first 10 minutes without really having to change anything in the PvZ matchup. And that often isn't so great. So a lot of people agreed on the issues were, and let's say we found like a couple of major issues. One, or like some major goals, I guess. The biggest goal was to make sure that Protoss could not straight away go into Airtos anymore. Our second goal was to make Groundtos from Stargate openers better by slightly nerfing the queens. 3, another goal was to make Terrans have an easier time defending against Blink DTs. 4, making sure that battery rushes, whether that's with a proxy Stargate or with a cannon rush against Zerg, would be slightly less strong. And 5, we wanted lurkers and widow mines to burrow less fast. Now, that last one definitely succeeded because we just changed one number there. But yeah, these were the main 5 goals. And yeah, I think they're good goals to start with as well. Now, you could say there's a couple of other goals that we missed that I think most people also agreed on. For example, the PvZ late game had not been addressed in this patch whatsoever. And one of the main reasons why that is the moment you touch the carrier just by itself, it would make the late game very difficult for Protoss because the Broodlord still exists. So the moment you want to touch the carrier, you kind of have to touch the Broodlord. But if you touch the Broodlord, the TVZ late game becomes really difficult. And then you need to start touching stuff that, that belongs to the Terran, whether that's going to be a Ghost or a Thor, or maybe, a combination of the two, or maybe even do something with tanks, whatever you want. There's a lot of moving pieces at that point already. And like I said, we were kind of getting, used to the feeling of having to make changes and just making sure that what we did was kind of correct. We decided not to touch that yet and kind of leave it for the future. That can be considered a mistake, or that cannot be considered a mistake. But I think for the first time, these were some pretty fair goals. So let's have a look to see whether I believe those goals were achieved or not. Now, the first two goals that we had, so making air tools harder to get into, and at the same time making ground tools easier to get into from a Stargate transition, they were kind of achieved by nerfing the Void Ray, increasing the build time, increasing the mineral cost from 200 to 250, and making that the queen can no longer transfuse off creep. So we have these two pretty small changes with, we hoped, a big impact. In some ways it worked out exactly like we wanted to. In other ways, maybe not quite as much. So let's just kind of go over what we think it achieved and what at least I am still afraid of. I don't want to speak too much for other people. So in my mind, I think ground toss has been practically made viable again. And here I'm specifically stating ground toss from a Stargate opener. So like we used to see back in 2019, 2018, double, triple Oracle, maybe Void Ray Oracle into some type of ground toss composition is just extremely increased in strength. And the main reason for this is before, if you wanted to open ground toss, you always needed to open with Disruptor in order to not die against any type of Queen Walk. Right now, because the Queen Walk pre-layer has been nerfed significantly, opening up with a Forge and a Twilight after an initial Oracle opener or after a Void Ray opener is actually viable. And because of that, we have seen new styles emerge, like the style that Hero has been playing recently. Hero, probably one of the best tosses at the moment in the GSL, showcased a very low gas style for Protoss after opening up with Oracles and continually harassing with high Stalker counts, lots of Zealots around the map. A very fun and interactive style that I don't think we would have seen if it wasn't for the Queen. Well, I know 100% we wouldn't have seen that because it just would have died every single game against the Queen Walk. So I think that definitely has some good effects. And there's a lot of other builds as well that have been made viable because of it. Just anything with that basically has an Oracle in it is now a lot more viable. And the fact that you don't need disruptors is very helpful. When it comes to nerfing going straight into air, we still have seen a decent amount of Protosses trying to get into air tools, and we've seen some tosses kind of succeeding with that. I don't necessarily think the double Stargate into Void Ray with a Disruptor defense is as powerful as it used to be, and I believe that it kind of consistently dies on majority of the maps. There's going to be some exceptions. Glittering Ashes, it will be really difficult to kill a Protoss, for example. Maybe even on 2K Atmospheres at times. But on most other maps, I think Protoss very consistently dies against a Roach Ravager Corruptor attack. With Queens as well, of course. And that does make me happy because that kind of was the goal. So that main strategy is gone. But now on kind of like the edges of what is playable, these kind of old school builds like double Stargate Phoenix has been a lot more popular. And that is just difficult to kill with some type of Ravager Roach Corruptor build, because Phoenixes deal a lot of damage and are not necessarily just defensive. There's good transitions available with that as well. And because the early Queen Walks are weaker, things like 2 Stargate Phoenix have gotten stronger. We recently saw a game between Nice and Raynor in which Nice played double Stargate Phoenix and just went straight into air. These things are, in my mind, an issue. And we haven't really been capable of completely addressing that. I do believe, however, that for a large portion, at the highest level of StarCraft 2, going straight into air tools, the likelihood of that happening in a game has been decreased by like, I think 70-75%. It's not perfect, but I think the likelihood of it happening is a lot lower, and I'm kind of happy with that. We just kind of have to evaluate how long that will stay, and maybe more needs to be done there, because it is really important that straight into air toss style remains pretty unviable at the highest level, at least in my opinion, and I think of the opinion of most viewers of StarCraft as well. That does not necessarily mean that I think the complete air toss or the late game of Protoss should be destroyed. I just think it should be harder to get there. Should not be capable of, at the start of the game, planning out the first 14 minutes without having to make any changes based on what you see. And I think we've largely kind of succeeded in that. I'm not completely happy with it, but kind of okay. You know, it's something is better than nothing. For the other three things I mentioned, so the battery nerf, I think, did exactly what it needed to do. Proxy void ray is a lot less common. I think creator proxy void ray that Maru wants, but it wasn't a one-based proxy void ray. It wasn't one with batteries. It was just a proxy void ray as a surprise, and Maru responded pretty suboptimal and died. So I don't think there's anything you can really do about that. And I think it's good as well that there is some strategic diversity, that there still are things viable. You just want them to be more in line, like the aggressive side with the defensive side. I think before with proxy void ray, with the batteries, it was a little bit too easy to execute and a little bit too difficult to defend. And I think we kind of managed to even that up in a way. So I'm pretty happy about that change. I haven't really seen anything too wrong with that. I'm looking forward to all the angry emails from the cannon rushers who have dropped 500 MMR, but that's life. Then the Dark Templar, it seems somewhat impactful. I mean, they have about 0.75 seconds extra after a blink to respond, so I do believe that's helpful. It still feels very frustrating for Terran if they do end up losing a planetary to DTs, but yeah, I think it's been a little less common. This probably is one of the smaller impact changes where you still see DTs being played a lot. You still see Terrans losing planetaries a lot as well. But I can't really say too much about it. I think it's somewhat successful as well. Because you don't really want to completely remove the Dark Templar either. Then the Widowmine and the Lurker, well, yeah, they now burrow slower. So I guess that worked. I mean, the change is what it is, and it really worked. So yeah, overall, I think the changes have been pretty successful for the goals that we stated. I think one of the main problems is that a lot of people expected a very big patch, or they wanted a very impactful patch. It has been a long time since we had a big patch in StarCraft 2, and people wanted things to switch up. When they heard that a patch was coming, they were like, "Oh, exciting!" And then really, we only changed very little things. And especially for the highest level of play as well, which does not impact the majority of people. So I understand that is very frustrating. I mean, this patch is capable of being put on a single screen here on your computer, which is great for making a YouTube video, so you never need to scroll. But it isn't great if you want some bigger changes. So yeah, let's talk about the bigger changes, and let's talk about the process on and what the future patches are most likely going to be. So for the final part of this video, I kind of want to talk about the process and the community council and the future of patching, and perhaps even a little bit about the next patch. So one of the main things that I immediately kind of want to address is the fact that we are with a lot of people. It's a very big group, the community council or the pro gamer council or the balanced chat or whatever you want to call it. And that inherently makes it difficult for everyone to be on the same line of thinking. So stating goals and finding suggestions and solutions to these problems that everyone is happy with can be tricky, but it has somewhat been working, honestly, better than I thought it would. If you get this many people together, we have some people in charge that kind of try to lead the conversation into a direction, push out certain deadlines to make sure that things get done in time. I feel like the process has been a lot more positive than I ever could have imagined it to be. And on top of that, I think one of the main fears of people is that because it's pro gamers, there's only going to be very conservative changes. And it's like, well, they don't want to nerf their own playstyle. I have to say that this is pretty much the opposite of what is true. And on top of that, I think we're also really free in what to do. And the suggestions that have been done so far are kind of all over the place. And pretty much anything is possible to implement. Like, honestly, we've gotten practically a complete, like a wild card, like a hall pass for anything, like bar adding in a fourth raise into the game. I think a lot, honestly, is possible. And I think most pro gamers are really trying to use this opportunity to change as much as possible, to really, have kind of a big patch, kind of have that main course that I was talking about, make sure it's a burger as big as we can build, while not trying to ruin the core of what StarCraft 2 is. So yeah, I can't really discuss too much of what exactly it is that we're doing, because not everything is clear. We're really just in the exploration phase of what is possible. You know, we test out some things, we talk about things here and there. But I think it obviously is not the perfect process. Don't get me wrong. Just like Pig said, he said, I would love to have Blizzard invest resources into this and have like 5 guys full time, their job being figuring out what would be the greatest balance, what would be great ideas to change. But we haven't had that in a very long time. So I don't think that's going to happen now, and this is pretty much the best system that we have, and I do have trust in it. I do believe that it can work, and I think the next patch is basically going to show whether that is the case or not. If the next patch is going to be a tiny patch with only a couple of nerfs and maybe some minor buffs, then I think you can say that the community council has kind of failed. But until the next patch, I think it's going to be really difficult to kind of judge whether this process works or not, because the first patch wasn't intended to be this grand and huge patch. So for you guys, I know you probably wanted more, and if you didn't get that, then I'm sorry, tough luck. But the future is hopefully bright, and I'm looking forward to see what everyone comes up with, and maybe sooner rather than later, we'll have something to to make everyone happy, make everyone smile. Maybe some patch notes in the future. So yeah, I think these are pretty much my thoughts that I had. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you have any suggestions or anything that you don't like about the game, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. I'm sure to read it. I'll talk it over with all of my good pro gamer friends as well. And we take your input very, very seriously. Don't forget that. Thank you, and bye-bye.